Big announcement today, guys. One I've been keeping a lid on for a while. I'm just gonna go straight in and put you out of your misery. The marathon I'm targeting this spring is the Copenhagen Marathon. And I'm really putting myself out there right here, right now, by going for an outlandishly big PB. This is the start of the 2:28 project and the continuation of the big Olympic dream. And I'm gonna get into exactly what I need to do to hit that scary goal, as well as digging into some worrying new barriers that might just be the biggest challenge I'll have to face in trying to make it to that Olympic dream, and might even signal the death of our sport as we know it. I think just joining this team and training with this team has really opened my eyes up to the possibility that I have around me. Training with people who have been to those high places, to the World Championships, to the Olympics. I mean, Kira medalled at the Europeans and the Commonwealths last year. To see them doing that and still setting scary goals, still chipping away and reaching higher than that, it's made me realise how much you have to back yourself, as well as putting the hard work in, and it just encourages you to have that attitude, back yourself for the scary goals, reach for those high places, and being around other people that are doing that is only more likely to get you there. I genuinely think that putting yourself out there and publicly saying, this is a really scary goal I've set myself and I'm gonna go and do it, it commits you to that goal. So while we're here, if you've got any scary goals that you're thinking of setting, put them in the comment section below. I want to know about them. It might be, I want to run my first 5K and finish it, or it might be, I want to run sub 4 hours for the marathon. Whatever it is for you, I want to know what it is, and I'm backing you to get there. It's been just over 1 year since I ran my first marathon at Seville, and I feel ready to take on this challenge again. I'm ready to go for that 26.2. I've learnt so much about myself just as an athlete and as a person over the last year, so I'm just excited. I'm excited to get started with the hard training, and I'm excited for the days where you genuinely don't want to do it, the days where you want to stop, the days where the sessions just feel awful and the long runs are never ending, because those are the days that make you more than ready for the big one. So this video is as much about this 2:28 marathon goal that I've set myself as it is about my trajectory just as a professional athlete. Later in the video, I'll talk a little bit more about that 2:28 goal, why I've set it for myself, and how on earth I'm gonna get there in just 12 weeks time. But I also wanted to talk about this just as part of the bigger picture. A lot of you watching this will have seen the I quit my job for an Olympic dream video, and if you haven't, go and give that a watch. And I got a lot of questions off the back of that video. Which Olympic year are you targeting? What event do you want to run at the Olympics? How are you gonna take 7 minutes off your marathon time to get the Olympic standard? And how does the qualification process even work? I'm gonna try and answer some of those questions, and then I'll talk about why this 2:28 project goal is so important for that ongoing path to the Olympics. Now, the Olympics are held every 4 years. Next year, they're in Paris, and in 28, they're being held in LA. And I'm gonna work my little legs off to get there next year, but ultimately, I'm 27 and I'm entering the peak age for a female distance runner. So if I have to wait another 4 years to be fast enough for LA, I will. Yes, currently my sights are set on the marathon, though I plan to keep at least a toe in the water for the shorter stuff on the track. I love racing on the track, and I've also seen how improving on my 5K and 10K speed has really helped me over the half marathon and the full marathon distance too, so likely to still be a key feature in my race schedule. Now, the Olympic qualifying standards for Paris 2024 are the toughest ever for a global championship, and that's because World Athletics wants just 50% of entrants to come via the qualifying standard, with the remaining 50% qualifying by their determined world ranking.
Why? So that athletes are motivated to compete at World Athletics certified events in order to attain points as the alternative routes to qualify. The points system is a video of its own, to be honest, and it's not a simple system to explain, but I'll put a few links in the description if you want to try and understand it, and I'll admit, I'm still getting my head around it as well, and I know plenty of other athletes are in that same boat. Now, that Olympic qualifying standard for the marathon in Paris stands at a crazy fast 2:26.50 right now, and it will almost definitely be faster come LA, which is almost 7 seconds faster than my current marathon time from my debut last year in Seville. Yes, athletes will qualify who ran slower than this, thanks to the 50% of places offered through the point system, but it's a much riskier route because to qualify through points, your governing body has to accept your entry when invited, which is a very important point, and I'm going to come back to that later on. A similar system is in place for the 2023 World Championships this year in Budapest, with points and entry standards offering qualification. And in most events, the standards for Worlds this year in Budapest are very similar to those that were used for last year's World Championships in Eugene, Oregon. The big difference comes in the marathon. In 2022, the World Championship standard for the women's marathon was 2:29.30, 2:11.30 for the men, and this year the women's standard is 2:28, while the men's is 2:09.40. The goalposts have effectively been moved by 1.5 minutes for the women and almost 2 minutes for the men in a matter of 1 year. To put that into perspective, that means that 25 out of last year's 63 competitors in the men's marathon would have been too slow to compete based on the new standards. And for comparison, the men's 5K standard was made quicker by 7 seconds and the 10K by 18 seconds. I need a drink. So I'm just gonna park that there before this video turns into a full-blown what the hell is happening to the world and Olympic qualification routes. And I'll say I'm shooting for 2:28, well, actually 2:27.59, because that's what I need to do to look towards running for my country at the World Championships this summer. And that, to me, is an important goal in order to even entertain the idea of running 2:26.50 next year for the Olympics. And whilst we're talking about making teams for your country, I can come back to that important point I mentioned earlier about your governing body, for me, that's British Athletics, needing to accept your invite if qualifying through the points, i.e. ranking high enough on the world's ranking system to receive an invite to those championships, which is likely to be with a slower time than that's required to receive automatic qualification.
What?
So slower than 2:28 in my case. And also their power to even select or not select athletes to go to the World Championships who have that entry standard. British Athletics have stated that their aim is to optimize medal success and the number of top 8 placings. They have stated that they will not be taking anyone who has run slower than 2:28, so no one will have their invite accepted based off the points, which is what World Athletics says should make up 50% of the 80-person field, because when you read the selection policy on the UK Athletics website that covers selection standard and invite by virtue of world ranking, the marathon time is listed as not applicable. So it's sub 2:28 or nothing. And this all comes after the news that broke this week, stating UK Athletics Chief Executive Jack Buckner says he wants to be more ruthless when picking teams for this summer's World Championships and next year's Olympics, believing that the old system was too soft, with some athletes just making up the numbers. I could really talk for hours on this, and this video is already becoming something totally different than I envisaged it would. But to put that back a few years, let's say, you could say that Mo Farah was just making up the numbers when he gained his first experience on the Olympic stage in 2008, finishing 17th in the 5K. 4 years later, he made history, winning double gold in the 5 and 10K in 2012. And if you want to check out what the athletics community thinks about this approach, and maybe add your own 2 cents or 3, check out this Instagram post from the Lap Count where pro Aussie and Canadian athletes are even weighing in about how this approach literally ruined the talent and success of their national teams and major championships for years. Or if you're more of a tweeter, there's loads of talk on this tweet here, including from past and present Olympians who have been there and done it themselves. It's certainly a debate that will rumble on, and I genuinely hope a bit of noise on this will actually make them reconsider their approach. But back to this scary goal that I've now set myself. 2:28 is 6.5 minutes faster than I was able to run just over a year ago in Seville. And that was obviously my first attempt at the marathon distance. And I'm not just sitting here saying I'm gonna run 2:27.59 because that's what the standard is. I'm backing myself to get there because I believe I can and because I want to push myself to the absolute ceiling of my capabilities. This year, that goal is sub 2:28, but that's not gonna be the end game. I'm gonna be setting loftier goals year on year until I pass my prime, and I'm sure I'll be finding new challenges for myself when running faster isn't an option anymore. And hopefully I'll be well into my 40s when that time comes. And honestly, reaching for scary goals that really test the absolute limits of my capabilities are a big part of the buzz I get out of doing this sport. So I wouldn't have it any other way. I also realise that I can't just sit here and say, I'm gonna run sub 2:28. And just expect that to happen. Manifesting it is not gonna cut it.
I am a powerful manifester.
I need to break that goal down into smaller, more manageable goals, weekly mileage targets, hitting marathon pace for big sessions, consistently looking after the little things, and as I always go on about, the process. Process goals are going to be centered around my routine, the backbone of the marathon block, routinely goal setting, not just for races, but for key sessions and long runs too, so that I'm purposeful with my efforts. Like saying, before this long run, I'm gonna do at least 15 minutes of activation exercises and drills to make sure that my legs are really ready to run for 2 hours. Routinely taking my protein and carbs on as soon as is physically possible after a workout. And sticking with my solid sleep routine, bed before 10, 8 to 10 hours without fail. Those and many more are the little 1% that come race day will all hopefully add up to the 4.2% improvement I need to make to get from 2:34.28 to 2:27.59.9. Talking of the 1%, I am absolutely thrilled to be working with OTE as my official fueling partner for this marathon block and beyond. I've been using the OTE gels, drinks, bars, and electrolyte tablets for a good few months now, and I honestly think it's already made a massive difference to my fueling game. So I'm gonna talk you through just a few of my favorite go-tos. First up, we have the pre-run essentials, electrolyte tabs, and your energy gels. The lemon flavor of these is my staple. I stick one of these in my drinks most days, but especially the day before tough sessions and long runs, just to make sure that I'm well hydrated and just as a reminder to drink more. I'll have one of these 20-gram carb gels, pre-session and pre-long run. They also contain electrolytes handily, so that just tops up my carbs when I've got a sizable session in front of me. Then we've got the during the run stuff. Now, these two products are going to be literally the only things I consume on race day come Copenhagen, and these are what I'm practicing with. In the sessions, in the long runs, they're the drinks and gels that I'm taking on board in those big marathon sessions. Super carbs. This stuff is the stuff. 80 grams of carbs in one 500ml bottle, genuinely tastes good, gets the big tick from the stomach whilst running at 5:38 minute miling, which is 3:31 for you metric people. And as well as being my drink that I'll take on every 5K during the race, this is also what I'll be sipping on for a couple of days leading up to the marathon itself to assist with that carb loading process. And I'll also use these 40-gram super gels during the runs that are 16, 17 miles plus, and fitting 40 grams into one single gel whilst maintaining a nice consistency and taste is something that I've not found in a gel before. There's no frog spawn-like thickness, and these berry ones go down so easy, and you get twice the carbs from your standard gel. It's a no-brainer. And lastly, we have these duo bars. Now, I could sit here and say that these are what I have post-run, but honestly, I have these pre-gym, post-run on my rest days. They are too good not to have, fantastic for restocking the carb stores, and absolutely bloody delicious. The team at OTE have supplied me with a tasty 20% off for all of you guys, and you can find the UK and Europe websites in the description below. Just use the code OTE-Philly20 at the checkout to get yourself 20% off. Huge thanks to OTE for sponsoring this week's video. Still fizzing. So where am I at now? I'm in the early stages of the marathon block, and everyone does a marathon block differently. Some taking 16 to 20 weeks to build up and prepare, others doing it in 10 weeks or even less sometimes. And for me, I did a 14-week block last year. That's what I'm doing again, so I guess I'm now 10 weeks out from the big day. 4 weeks have gone quickly. So apart from getting sick earlier this week with a nasty sore throat, training has been going really well. I've already started the marathon specific paced work, and as you might have seen in my last video, I've hit 17 miles on an easy long run. I also got a really solid 5 weeks of base work in at altitude in Flagstaff before officially starting this block, which has just laid such a great foundation for the marathon specific work. And out in Flag, we really just focused on being consistent, keeping the mileage fairly high, and doing a lot of tempo focused work, with a few speeder sessions thrown in there just to keep in touch with that speed. And even just putting the bread and butter mileage to one side for a second, I feel so much stronger, both mentally and physically, compared to where I was this time last year. Big part of that is consistently going to the gym twice a week. I've been adding proper strength work into my program and building on my weaknesses, which has been huge. I've pretty much had 12 months of uninterrupted training, COVID aside. I've not had any injuries, touch wood, and I'm just stacking up consistent months of running, not necessarily doing anything sensational, but chipping away, and that's massive for building your fitness. But more than that, I think just my general happiness with life, my routine, what I spend my time doing, since quitting my job, since turning my life upside down really, has absolutely transformed my attitude towards everything. I'm happier in general, which also means I'm a happier athlete, and happy runners are faster runners. That's a known fact. I have run my worst ever races and times when I've been utterly miserable, with confidence shot to pieces. So it's just really nice to reap the rewards of being on the other end of that scale, if you like. So what's next for the block? Well, short term, I've got a couple of races planned within the block. The first being Trafford 10K this weekend, and then a half marathon towards the end of March. Unconfirmed as to which race that's going to be yet. And the plan is to do both those races without much of a taper, because I'm just focusing on the big goal of the marathon. So keeping the training fairly high for each week with that in mind. And I might come down slightly towards the end of the week for the half, but not as much as I usually would if it was a key race. But that being said, actually, I've sort of had an unintentional taper for Trafford 10K this weekend, because I didn't run Tuesday, I didn't run Wednesday, thanks to the nasty bug that I had, but hopefully my legs will just be very well rested for that one. Then, as we move into April, it's gonna be all business. A really crucial 4 weeks of training, which will be high mileage, some big marathon sessions, and I'm sure some of the longest long runs that I'll do in the block. And I don't know exactly what I'll be doing for those sessions, because my coach will tell me sort of the fine details of those sessions, if you like, the week of those key workouts. But I've got a fairly good idea from last time around that there's going to be some real tough ones in there, which I look forward to with a weird sort of dread in my stomach at the same time. I love long marathon pace workouts because they're just my kind of session, but I also know how savage they are and how ruined you can be afterwards. And I'll be completing a lot of that business part of the block at altitude, which is going to be really cool. The team are heading out to St. Moritz from mid-April. All I've heard from everyone I know that's been there is just how stunning it is as a place to train and how expensive it is. So that should be really cool, and I'll obviously be taking you along with me for that trip. And then it'll be taper time before we know it. We stay out in St. Moritz until 2 days pre-marathon so that we get the benefit of coming down just before we race. And the research suggests that either racing 2 days after dropping down to sea level or waiting for sort of 2 to 3 weeks produces the best training effect. So that's the reason for the timing there. And luckily this time around, it's not a long haul travel because Copenhagen's pretty close to St. Moritz. That should be nice and chilled, aside from the paranoia that taper brings on, but I don't really need to worry about that for another 8 to 9 weeks. So I've got 10 weeks to smash this marathon to pieces. That's about 9 long runs, 18 workouts, 18 gym sessions, approximately 700 miles, a couple of races thrown in there, and a month of altitude training. I better get cracking. Love the grind. Love the grind. Oh man, I wanted a fizz mustache. Cool.